Round us love our God supremely. Let us love each other too. Let us love and pray for mourners till their Savior they can view. Then we'll love them the better. Take them to our kind embrace. Journey with them on to glory, there to sing redeeming grace.
Again, it's good to see you all this morning. Our crowd is pretty small, smaller than usual because lots of other meetings are going on, and y'all continue to pray for them. I ask for your prayers to continue for me this morning. As I want to visit with you here today a little bit, kind of an informal discussion about a little bit of history. I hope I don't bore you. I don't know all the history of the Bible, the Old Testament, and studying. I think it has a lot of lessons for us today. So we're going to look at a little bit of that history. I'll end up in the book of Daniel. Some of the prophecies that Daniel made and talk about what I think are the importance of them today. Our history on right now, what's going on over in the Middle East. We're engaged in a, what you call it, a war or not, politically, but anyway, we're fighting against people. But it's over the Middle Eastern country. Of course, that's where the Holy Land was. You know, we've always talked about history. You know, one of the things when you learn as a kid, the kind of the prophetic or proverbs, is that if you don't know your history, then you're doomed to repeat. And so I think it's important that we understand the history that's going on and how it came about, because it also affects us in our church practice, in our worship practice. So I'm going to end up in the book of Daniel, and especially over in the 7th chapter of the book of Daniel, the Proverbs, the prophecies that are in there, and talk about those a little bit and try to make sense to us today. To get started, you know, when the earth was formed, you know, the book of Genesis is loaded with stuff. We go through all sorts of the history. The main stories in there that we're aware of. The Lord created the earth and it grew. Adam and Eve, and they populated the earth at one time. And the Lord looked down to get up to the 6th chapter of Genesis, and the Lord became unhappy because he said, you know, all the people were evil and turned to evil thoughts in the hearts of all the men. And he kind of got unhappy with that because he said just everybody was evil. But Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. And you know what happened to Noah? He had Noah build the ark and provide for Noah and his 3 sons and their wives. So he had 8 people that was saved with the ark. But the flood, you know, wiped out the things on the earth. And even talked about, if you're looking at, I believe it's the 6th chapter, and there were giants under that. If you read that, it's talking about the Nephilim, and that's when the giants and the giant animals. And that would be what we would call probably the dinosaur age. Back then, it's what we believe happened, and the flood wiped most of them out at that time. But it changed the nation. He had 3 sons, and their families, Ham, Shem, and Japheth, and after the flood ended, I'm not going to cover that, but it's a great story, but you really don't know. We all know the great flood, and after those families repopulated the earth. Ham, Shem, and Japheth. Ham, you know, was there. They all went their way. They all populated part of the world. We go in different directions. Ham went to the south and the east. He's always kind of considered the dark skinned one. Japheth, the Caucasian one that went up and populated his ancestry, his and his descendants, populated the European and all the Caucasians, and then Shem was the father of the Middle Eastern, the Arab, and the Jewish Hebrew population. After that, you know, took place, God was still unhappy because the people were not following His word, and they were decided the one thing they wanted to do is they wanted to be gods themselves. And so you get over into chapter 11 of Genesis, and all the people then decided they were going to build a tower into heaven so they could go up and see God and visit God and be God themselves. And y'all know what happened to the Tower of Babel. The Lord got displeased with that, so he came down and confused their languages. Before that, the nation, the world, was one language. All the people spoke the same language, whatever that language may have been back then. But they spoke it all together. He went down and confused their languages where they couldn't communicate with one another. And they did, and as a result of that, they became scattered. If you read the 11th chapter of Genesis, it talks about let's build us a building up into heaven because lest we be scattered among the earth and not know each other. And that's exactly what happened to them because they tried to do something they were not supposed to do, is build a tower into heaven. And so the Lord came down, confused their languages, scattered them over the earth as a result of that. That's how we ended up with all our cultures, all our nations and our culture. They got scattered. That and the fact that Ham, Shem, and Japheth all went different directions and had their populations, but he also scattered them among the earth. And then, we get over and we know that, I'm jumping around here a little bit, God chose the people, chose his own people. He chose Abraham and his descendants to be the father of the nations. And, Abraham and Isaac and Jacob became the father. He chose the Jewish tribe to be that way. He chose, and by the doctrine of election, and I spoke on that a few weeks ago, so I'm trying not to belabor that too much so you get past that. But he chose his people. God elected him a people, and he chose the Hebrews, the Jewish people. People have trouble with the doctrine of election, and I spoke on that. But that's exactly, they don't have trouble with believing that God elected him a people. Right off the bat in the Old Testament, that was the Jewish people through Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. He got people and called them the nation of people, and those became his particular people. That's in Exodus 19. He talked about again in Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy 7, I believe, 7, 11, 12, where it says he specifically chose him to be his people, his holy people, and elected him. The problem, as he told him, is it comes with a condition. The condition is you have to follow his commandments. Of course, as we've said, they never did. They always broke the commandments. That's part of the doctrine of the Kiddush spoke of, is the doctrine of depravity. The depravity in the world and the depravity of man, that's where we are. When Adam fell in the Garden of Eden, people always think of evil things and evil thoughts. When I say men, I talk about men and women, mankind. So you had, in Deuteronomy chapter 7, he chose this particular people. The problem was that he told them that they had to follow his commandments, and we know that they disobeyed his commandments throughout the Old Testament. Apostle Peter said, why did you put those old laws and old commandments on? Because we can't follow them, and our forefathers before us could never follow them. That's just the nature of mankind. We can't seem to obey the commandments of Christ like the Lord, like he would want us to. I mean, you look, many examples of that are in the book of Judges. But through all the book of Judges, and it talks about, people turning their thoughts to evil ways. And they had to do things to fix it. And people continue. Throughout the Old Testament, we're told that people continue to obey and not follow the requirements of the Lord. So as a result of that, because so many people disobeyed it, God allowed judgment upon his people. And even though he chose the people that led them to the Holy Land, they were down in Egypt, I don't want to belabor all that story. No. When they got to the Holy Land, they ended up half of the Holy Land was occupied by the tribes of Judah and Benjamin. The other 10 tribes were in the north. The kingdom of Judah and the kingdom of Israel. We had this kingdom in place at the time. The Jewish people had a kingdom, and kingdom of Israel. And we know that when God saw he couldn't keep them in line and keep them in obedience, and you can read Jeremiah and Isaiah, it tells you a lot about all the things they did, how he wasn't happy with them. That was what especially Israel and Jeremiah, Isaiah and Jeremiah were about, was warning the people about, hey, you've got to follow the commandments of God. God's going to to bring judgment on us, and he did. He backed off and allowed Assyria to come in. Assyria to come into the nation of Israel. 10 tribes at the top of Israel, the nation of Assyria came in, and the king brought in people from all other nations and integrated them into the northern 10 tribes. And such that they intermarried, which they weren't supposed to do, they intermarried, they started worshiping the gods of the Assyrian people, and they lost their identity. They lost their identity as Jews. They intermarried and they were no longer pure Jews. And that's going to be important when we get over to look at it. They lost their identity completely, and that's when we talk about the lost tribes of Israel. That's the 10 tribes down in this here. What we call those people now that intermarried with the Assyrians, we call them Samaritans. And they had the northern part of the Holy Land, and that's the reason the Jewish people never liked them, because they lost their ethnic purity. They were, purebloods. They were half-breeds, more or less, and so they lost their identity. That was their judgment. And they lost their identity as a nation of Israel, because now they intermarried and became half and half with the Assyrian people. But even then, the nation of Judah and Benjamin on the bottom, they still wouldn't follow the commandments of the Lord, and that's in Jeremiah and Isaiah also. And it says the nation of the kingdom of Judah is following suit like that. And so the Lord ended up backing off, and he allowed Babylon to come in, King Nebuchadnezzar, Babylon to come in and take over Jerusalem. He carried the best and the brightest people that he could find, the scientists, the smart kids, everything. He took them back to Babylon, 100 of them back to Babylon, exiled them there, and the rest of it, he destroyed Jerusalem. That was in about 586 BC. He destroyed Jerusalem, destroyed the temple, took away the Ark of the Covenant, the beloved Ark of the Covenant. Nobody knows what it is today other than Indiana Jones, perhaps. And then the Ark of the Covenant is gone. He destroyed the temple, took all the vessels and cups and all the things out of the temple, the holy vessels, the wash, all the drinking cups and the washing vessels. Took all the back to Babylon with him, his bounty that he got when he captured Jerusalem. And so that's where the nation of Israel is today. We see them, but they, at this time, after they went to Babylon, they're gone. Assyria took over the northern tribes, and they've become Samaritans now. They're not no longer ethnic Jews like they were. They lost their purity. When we talk about when we have dogs, we want to keep the purebred of Dalmatians and Huskies and Retrievers, German Shepherds. We want to keep them purebred. So that's what you go is you get a bloodline and make sure they're all pure. That's what the Jewish people were supposed to do. Of course, those in the north did. They intermarried with all the Syrians, started worshiping their gods. They even disobeyed them and continued their disobeyment up in the Syrian population. And so that's where the Samaritans came from. That's how they got their name. They lived in Samaria, but they were actually the people who had intermarried with the Assyrian, Arab-based people, and they lost their identity, and that's why the Jewish people hated them so much. We talk about the Good Samaritan, someone who hates you, doesn't have any duty at all, doesn't mind you, but comes and helps you. And that's, of course, that's what Jesus was in a big picture way. But then, even after Assyria was gone, Babylon came, and King Nebuchadnezzar came. Babylon today, Assyria is in the north, for instance, basically what the country of Syria is today. Babylon was the country we call Iraq today. They took all people back to Babylon, which is near Baghdad, in that area up there. So the nation, all the history that's in that area, especially in Iraq, is tied to Babylon and Nebuchadnezzar. Saddam Hussein thought he was Nebuchadnezzar reincarnated. That's what he thought. It's not in the Bible, but then it shows you there's still a lot of history goes on there. And those people over there have not forgotten this. The Jewish people have it. You have the Muslim people who have now moved in and kind of taken over most of the Middle East that the Jewish people don't occupy. But you had Assyria and Babylon, and so with that, when Babylon, I'm going to cut to the chase real quick, and they came and took them to Babylon. We know they were exiled for 70 years. Many of them got to return back home. But when they went to Babylon, that's when the Lord talked about the covenant. His covenant with Israel was gone. It was broken. In fact, in Jeremiah it says, he issued the nation of Israel as a bill of divorce. he divorced the country. And so the nation of Israel, beginning then, that's when they actually broke up, was in 586, when they were captured and taken to Babylon. Those that weren't were underneath the Babylonian control back in Jerusalem. And the country was gone as of then. The kingdom of Israel was gone. And it's gone completely by 70 AD when Rome came in. We'll talk about that again. But it was essentially gone then. The Lord says in Jeremiah, he issues a bill of divorce with the nation of Judah and the nation of Israel, the two broken halves of the kingdom of Israel and the kingdom of Judah after they split after Solomon died. So he's issued a bill of divorce for both of them. So he has divorced the countries now. He wrote it. Now, so those kingdoms are gone. They're no longer here anymore. We talk about that a lot. We talk about who is Israel now. I spoke about it a while back. About Israel, the kingdom of Israel is gone. The kingdom that's in the Bible is gone. It's no more. It's been taken over by the Assyrians and the Babylonians, and then the Lord has cut ties with them because he issued them a bill of divorce. Now, some of those in Babylonian that kept their identity as Jewish, they returned. They had to rebuild the temple. It was never the same. It wasn't the same temple that Solomon built. They came back. They tried to come back and reclaim it and reestablish it again. And they're still doing that today. They're still trying to reestablish the kingdom of Israel. And you hear even in the world today, they'll talk about that. Well, God, when Jesus comes back, he's going to establish his kingdom in Jerusalem, at Jerusalem, and he'll reign there for 1,000 years. I don't believe any of that is supported by the Bible, but that's what they believe, and so it's going on there. And to understand some of the history that's going on there now, Babylon, Assyria came in and took over. That's where the country of Iraq is now, and that's where Baghdad was, and where Babylon was. And over when I've got a crisscross circle, when Assyria came in, Assyria is the country of Syria. Babylon came in, and that's the country of Iraq and Syria were the first two to come in. Now, when we're about to see that then things started happening after that, after about 300 years, and captivity, I'm sorry, back up, sorry. They were in captivity for about 70 years, and then they came home. But they had no nation now, they had no temple, they tried to put it back together. But they had a temple in the New Testament that Herod built for them, but it was never the same. They never had their kingdom again after that. And that's, of course, when Jesus came, it's when it becomes clear the nation of Israel as a spiritual kingdom is gone. The kingdom now was established by Christ, and it's now a spiritual kingdom. But that old nation of Israel, I support it, the nation of Israel, they've got a lot of heritage. Apostle Paul tells us that the Jews had the advantage, they've had it every way, and we recognize that. But now, the kingdom of heaven is in your heart. We have a spiritual kingdom. And Jesus said it to King Pilate when he was there, my kingdom is not of this world, it's a spiritual kingdom. So that's what happened, took place with those. But you have in the Bible, you tell people in the Bible, tell you that the kingdom will return. It will return someday when Jesus comes back. That's where they read Revelations. Many of us don't read it that way, but that's a good story and it sounds good. And so we have a lot of Christians believe the Lord is going to come back. Jesus is going to come back, reestablish his kingdom in Jerusalem, and come back again and have a kingdom again, a 1,000-year reign. We don't believe that, and we don't believe that's capable, and that's why a lot of them are supporting Israel today. I support Israel because it's a democratic country, and they are our heritage in a physical sense. We are now Israel. All the elect of God are now Israel that is really talking about in the Bible. When the Babylonians, when the people came back from Babylonia, they had no temple, they had no ark, they tried to rebuild the temple. They never could recreate the Ark of the Covenant, never could recreate the temple. If you go read Malachi, he tells them, one of these days, the Lord's going to return to his temple. That's not talking about the physical temple. It's talking about the temple is now you. The temple of the Lord is inside you. It's in your heart. That's part of the spiritual kingdom. We get over, and this is what I want to get up to in up and tell the history if that's what's going on over there. These people don't forget. The nation of Israel, when they left Egypt, the Lord told them, I want you to go over there and go into the Holy Land. That's your country now. The people that don't submit to you, I want you to kill them. And if they do submit to you, then you can live with them and work it out. But you're supposed to kill everybody who doesn't agree to let you come in and work with them. Get over into Joshua. Joshua was the one that was led them across the Jordan River, led them into the Holy Land. He followed Moses, but he took care of all the battles. And he went in and won. At the end of the book of Joshua, you will see that Joshua reports to the Lord, and he said, Lord, we took care of all those countries, out countries, the Canaanites and Hivites and Hittites, all of them. We took care of all of them, like he told us to do, except for two places. We didn't take care of those people over in Gaza. The Lord had warned him about. Those people love to fight, and they'll create war, and they'll run you off. And he said, we also didn't take care of this place over there, the Gerzites. That's the West Bank. That's the one that's still in contention there today. So right now, we see that the nation of Israel, the actual physical nation of Israel today, is having trouble with those Philistines that are in the Gaza, and the Philistines back then being now called the Palestinians, and having trouble over in the West Bank. You hear that? Those were two places that Joshua did not take care of, like the Lord, what they were commanded to, and they didn't get that done. And that's still giving them trouble today. But the Israelites, that's still their command. Take the Holy Land. And you see that coming out when the political leaders over there are making religious type decisions. Israel believes it still has a right to that country. And they're going to go in because the Lord directed them to go in and kill all those people, including those in Gaza, and they're doing that. And now you have the Muslims have already taken over that country. I'm going to back up and say that after the Babylonian Empire was there for about 500 years or whatever, then we had a situation where the Persians came in. We'll read Ezra, it's talking about Cyrus. Cyrus came in and freed them and let all the people from Babylon. He beat Babylon and let all the captured exiles come back home. And they came back home, that's in Ezra and Nehemiah. They rebuilt the temple, didn't build the sun. Wasn't near the grandeur that Solomon had it. But he came back and rebuilt it because the Babylonians still had control over the country until they were defeated by Cyrus the Persian. Persian is where Iraq is. Persia still claims, once they took it over with Cyrus, once they took it over and took over Babylon, and the Syrians defeated them, they had a huge kingdom. And they took that over, and they were followed then by the Greeks who took over the Persians and defeated the Persians and created a bigger empire. And then you had some country come along called Rome, Italy, the Italians. They came and took over that. And so Israel has been led by different people over the years. They've never gotten back to being independent government by themselves. Now they're governed by themselves, a clerical government. But they never have been able to re-establish the kingdom. They still believe they were working off the original instructions and commandments by God back in Deuteronomy. Early on, when they were given that country, they told they were going in to take it over, and that would be their country. And they didn't go in and do the job right. They've never been able to do the job right. None of us would be here. We all kind of violate the commitments of God. But that's what happened. Now, they keep wanting to go back in and rebuild everything and bring the kingdom back. They think the Lord is going to come back to Jerusalem in a physical sense and reign again there. That's what they're looking for. And that's what I want to get into you in the book of Daniel. The book of Daniel has some prophecies in it, and it plays an important role in this discussion that we're having here. Now, the book of Daniel is primarily known for three things. Fiery furnace, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who got thrown into the fiery furnace by the controlling leaders there in Babylon. Go in the book of Daniel, Daniel talks about the first few verses. He was one of those people that got captured and exiled to Babylon. He's there with the best and the brightest. And Nebuchadnezzar took the smartest kids, those are the rich, populated, educated, and took them back to Babylon. Daniel tells us who those are in the first few verses in there. Verse 4, children in whom no blemish was found were well favored, skillful in all wisdom, cunning in knowledge and understanding. They had such ability in him to stand in the king's palace. And Daniel was one of those favored people that was smart that Nebuchadnezzar saw and brought that Jewish person back to Babylon. He did this with hundreds of them. children and scientists, like we did after the World War II. We brought back all the German scientists from Germany over here, and that's how we were able to build the atom bomb and go to the moon, because we brought back all those German scientists over here, especially over here in Los Angeles. That's where they're located, most of them. Countries did that back then. They would capture the best and take them back home and make them work. That's what happened in Babylon. And Daniel is explaining that in this chapter here, that after they brought them all back, he said, but Daniel over here in verse 4, the king was trying to, these people that were favored, they were taking care of them. They wanted to make sure they took care of them and utilized them, utilized the knowledge they had, the resources they had. So they were making them eat the food over there, the Babylonian foods, and try to worship the Babylonian gods. We get over here in verse 8 of Daniel, and Daniel explains that Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with the portion of the king's meat, nor with the wine which he drank, and therefore he requested the prince of the eunuchs that he might be able not to be defiled. He formed a group. Daniel headed up a group, if you don't read this video, of Jews that stayed pure. They wanted to be able to go back home someday, and they wanted to keep themselves as Jews, keep their ethnic cleansed. They didn't want to be like northern tribes where the Assyrians conquered them and they just blended in with them and they lost their identity. These are the Jews that wanted to come back home and did come back home, and they kept themselves pure. You read a little further in detail, you'll find out that these people that Daniel started, keep yourself pure and clean. Don't eat the Babylonians' food. Keep your straight food, keep unleavened bread, those type of things. Keep yourself pure and clean. Don't intermarry with the Babylonians. Somebody did, but he's trying to keep them together. That group later became the group that's known as the scribes and the Pharisees, the hardliner Jews. When they went back home, that's the group that went back home were those that became the Pharisees in the New Testament. And so that's what Daniel was trying to do here, was keep them all clean and pure. But Daniel is primarily known for, that people they wouldn't follow a lot of stuff, and so they had to throw these guys into the furnace. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They threw them in the furnace. Of course, we know that it's heated 7 times hotter than normal, and yet these people came out without a burn on them, because the king looked in there and saw that he thought he saw the Son of God in there with him. Of course, that's when Jesus made an appearance in that furnace and saved those people when they came out. That's one of the things that Daniel is best known for. Second thing is the handwriting on the wall. Nebuchadnezzar couldn't read the writing. He saw a handwriting right on the wall. He couldn't read it and interpret it. None of his soothsayers and magicians couldn't read it either. So they found out that Daniel could. So Daniel came and interpreted it, and he said, your kingdom is going down. If y'all have ever seen the show, The Knight's Tale, when the knight gets beat, they stand over him and say, you have been examined, you've been tried, and you've been found wanting. And that's what was in that. That came right out of Daniel. Daniel told Nebuchadnezzar, you've been tried, you've been examined, you've been tried, and you've been found wanting. You're about to lose your kingdom. He told him, you're going down. He didn't like to hear that message, but that's one of the things that's known as the handwriting on the wall. It's in chapter 5. And that's a good story. We'll talk about that. The other one is Daniel disobeyed the order not to pray openly. In the New Testament, we tell us don't pray in a bragging way. We're to go to a closet to pray. We don't pray on street corners to be seen in. Daniel prayed openly, and that's not a criticism. He was openly defiant. I'm showing everybody I'm still worshiping the Lord. And he got thrown into the lions again. The Lord shut the mouth of the lions. Those 3 incidents are what's probably best known about the book of Daniel, is that those 3 things about he read the handwriting on the wall, the fire furnace that his 3 friends were thrown into, and the Lord protected them, and he protected him in the lion's den. What I want to get to is chapter 7 over here. Chapter 7 is the prophecy of Daniel. A little bit confusing prophecy, but this is one place where it is prophecy. He talks about what's going to happen to the nation of Israel. He points out and says, the nation of Israel has been defeated, Israel and Judah, the entire Israel, kingdom of Israel has been defeated. He says, here's what's about to happen to it. He sees a vision. It is real quick. It's over in chapter 7. He had a vision. He saw 4 different beasts. And he says the first beast was like a lion. It had eagle's wings, and the wings had been plucked. But he had it went in and captured it. The first beast was what we're talking about here is Babylon. He's talking about the first beast of the nation of Israel was Babylon. Babylon defeated them and took them back to Israel, and that's what he's talking about, this beast, and that's what it's described. A lion was the symbol of Babylon back then. The winged lion, it had eagle's wings, but the wings were all plucked. And a man's heart was given to it because Nebuchadnezzar didn't last. He turned out to be not a god, but he was an ordinary man. He died as Daniel had predicted. He said he saw a vision of a lion that had wings. Let's talk about Babylon. Verse 5 it says, and behold, another beast, a second one, was likened to a bear. It raised itself up on one side. The bear is Persia. That's who came in, that's who Cyrus was. Cyrus came in from Iraq. They called it Persia at the time. If you notice, Iraq was one that we had all trouble with in the 1970s. And the Shah of Iran, he considered himself a Persian. He was a Persian. He didn't consider himself an Arab over there. He was a Persian, which is an Arab descent. But he came, his son lived in Lubbock for a while and turned out to be. But those were Persians in there. Today, the country of Iraq, people there still consider themselves pure-blooded Persians. But this is the second vision he has that Persia is coming, and it's going to take over. And what he's telling us here is that Israel is no longer a dependent. God had set it up as an independent nation that he would care for and take care of. Now, I see these four beasts coming along. So the first one's Babylon. You're under the dominance of Babylon. He's away from it. Next, he says in verse 5, along comes another beast, and it was like a bear. That's the Persians. He says it had raised up on one side, and it had 3 ribs in its mouth. If you go do your natural history, Persia had defeated 3 other countries before they came and defeated Babylon. They defeated Babylon and Assyria. That's what the Persians did, and they took over. And they had an empire. You get your maps out, you can see the empire of Babylon was larger than Northeast. The empire of Persia came in, it was bigger. A little bit bigger. They took the Holy Land and they defeated the Assyrians. That's Persia, and Cyrus is the one that came back here. He was kinder than the previous people in Babylon. He let the people go back home. You go read the book of Ezra where the people come back and build the temple. The very first verse of Ezra talks about the decree of Cyrus. Allowed people to come back home. Cyrus was the head of the Persians. And he let them come back home. Daniel is seeing this in a vision before he occurs. He sees Babylon's here now, and they're like a lion. Next is going to be the beast, and it's going to be like a bear. And it's already got raised up on one side. And that's because Persia had already defeated another bigger country. They had intermediate and defeated smaller countries. And that's what he's doing. He says he's raising on one side, and it has 3 ribs in its mouth. That's the 3 countries they had already defeated before they defeated Babylon and Assyria both. And in verse 5 it says, and another beast, that's what I just read, the second to the bear. Verse number 6, and lo, there's another beast, the third one, a leopard. A leopard is coming in, it's going to be there for 270 years, and this was Greece. So we already have the Holy Land that was independent. It was a spiritual, it was the kingdom of Israel. They've been defeated by the Assyrians. They've been defeated, and the Babylonians came and defeated the Syrians and took it over, and that's what the first one was. He said next he's going to come in, it's going to be the Persians, and they came over, and they were there for 250 years, and you see the maps, the kingdom was bigger even than Babylon. It's surrounded the Mediterranean. And the verse I left out, I should have covered first. Chapter 7, it says, Daniel had these visions, and he wrote about them. It says, verse 2, Daniel spake of it, and he said, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the 4 winds of heaven strove upon the great sea. That's the Mediterranean he's talking about. Coming in from all directions. The wind blows in from all directions on the Mediterranean. And 4 great beasts came from up from the sea, diverse one from another. They're all different. But they all came around the sea. All these people that are invading coming from the sea of the Mediterranean. That's what he's talking about. The first one was Babylon. It's the lion, and that's the rock. And they were there for 350 years. Babylon, there before Persia came back and defeated them. And they ruled over the Holy Land for about 250 years. And then the third one, it says, is like a leopard. And that was a symbol of Greece. Greece came and overthrew the Persians. Greece were led by a guy named Alexander the Great. The history of Alexander the Great took over. They were a little bit better about taking care of things, but they were the third great animal that took over. Israel has gone now for nearly 1,000 years, being dominated by somebody else. They've not ever gotten back to being their kingdom. That's what Daniel is telling us here. Verse 6, it says, the last one there was a leopard, which had upon it the back of it 4 wings of a fowl, and the beast also had 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. Dominion was given, they had dominion over Israel. They had 4 heads. After Alexander the Great died, it was divided into 4 parts. It had 4 kingdoms. That's what he's referencing there. And he's predicting this in advance. Daniel is prophesying all of this. So we've gone through Babylon, we've gone through Persia, and now we've gone through Greece. And they've been dominated now for almost 1,000 years by other countries. Israel has never been a free nation since then, even though they keep wanting to return back and go back and have their kingdom. They've never been allowed to have their own independent kingdom. When you get down here in verse 7, it says, "And this I saw in the night visions, and beheld a 4th beast, dreadful and terrible, strong exceedingly, and it had great iron teeth. It devoured and brake into pieces and stamped the residue with the feet of it, and it was diverse from all the other beasts, and were before it, and it had 10 horns." He's talking about the Roman Empire. You had the Babylonians, you had the Persians, you had the Greece, and then you had the Roman Empire. Israel has been under the dominance of every one of them since. And we're led to believe that they've lost their kingdom of Israel as we are. The Lord has not let them return back to their kingdom because they didn't follow his commandments. And he's prophesying it here because Israel will never, that's what he goes on and says, they've been dominated ever since. And the last one was the monster Rome, and he dominated the Roman Empire. You get yourself a map and you see these Babylonian Empire where it was, and then the Persian Empire where it was, and the Greek Empire where it was, and then the Roman Empire, they actually overlapped into Canada. They're totally surrounded the Mediterranean Sea, which goes back to where we talked about 4 great beasts came in from the sea, diverse one from the other. They totally surrounded the Holy Land, and every one of them, one after the other, is taken over. And of course, we know that the nation of Israel was dominated by Rome even into the New Testament. That's what Daniel was prophesying about. Talking about how all these people, the final one was the monster Rome, came in 67 AD. It's gone 1,000 years now since the Lord had judgment on Israel and Judah. Israel has gone completely, the inhabitants of Israel, the nations, the tribes of Israel. Judah took over where the Jews came from. And it's been dominated by all these countries, and Daniel is predicting this. He's prophesying all of this. Now, one of the issues we have here is that if you go to the Hebrew Bible, what I call Hebrew Bible, I don't know if they call it Bible, but they're scriptures. And you go through them, and of course they're Old Testament, they don't believe in the New Testament, they don't believe Christ has come yet. But all their Testament books that are in their Hebrew Bible, it's everything. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Deuteronomy, Numbers, just like ours, it goes all the way through. It has all the history in there. There's the First Chronicles and the Second Chronicles and Kings, and all the books of our Old Testament, just like us. Then you get to the prophets, and it has every single prophet that we have in there, except Daniel. They don't have a prophecy of Daniel. Daniel says, you don't have a kingdom if you're not ever getting it back. He tells them you will never be the same again since you violated the Lord. That's what Daniel is prophesying. He said, you're not going to have a kingdom because you keep being dominated by everybody else. And he goes and he talks about the 10 horns of Rome, and that's the 10 subsequent leaders of Rome, all the Caesar group, Titus, and I can't think of all their names. The various Caesar ones, the Titus is the one that came in and demolished Jerusalem in 70 AD. So even though that Rome came in 67, put in Herod in place, and that's when they did rebuild the temple by Herod. But they were always under the domination of Rome. The reason they couldn't kill Christ without permission from the Roman governors. They had to go to Pilate to get his permission to crucify him, because they were under dominance. Jewish people keep thinking they're going to come back as this kingdom. The leader of who it is, their leader is Christ. Sometime a leader's going to come back and lead us, soldiers are going to lead us, and we'll have dominance again. We'll have a kingdom here, kingdom of Israel back again in Jerusalem. Daniel says, no, you're not. You've been dominated, you've always been dominated, and they've now lost their ability. The kingdom has changed. We now have a spiritual kingdom. That's what even Jeremiah tells us in there that even God has been trying to build a divorce. That means it's a little to build a divorce from you. He was married to you, but now he's completely build a divorce. You're on your own. And that's what Daniel has been telling them here. You're on your own. And even under the dominance of all these four major beasts we've got going on here. Anyway, we've learned now that we have, I mentioned this before, we have a spiritual kingdom. Over here in the book of Romans, Apostle Paul tells us, for he is not a Jew now, which is born outwardly, neither is that a circumcision, which is outwardly in the flesh, but he's a Jew, which is born inwardly. We are now Jews. The nation of Israel has changed the physical kingdom. They keep wanting the physical kingdom back. The New Testament tells us there won't be a physical kingdom back. It's not going to happen. He tells us that, Apostle Paul tells us that in Romans 11, he said, what then? Israel has not obtained that which it seeketh for. It wants a kingdom back of its own. It has not obtained that which it seeketh for, but the election has obtained it, and the rest were blinded. The Jews have been blinded because now the spiritual kingdom is chosen by election. It's important. Of course, the Lord did this before the foundation of the world. But the kingdom is now chosen by election of God. It includes not only the Jews, but also the Gentiles. Go to John chapter 18, where Jesus was in front of Pilate, verse 36. Jesus answered when he was talking about, is he a king or not? He said, my kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, then I would serve its fight, that I should not be delivered to the Jews. And now is my kingdom not from hence. He's not in that kingdom that they're talking about. It's not a spiritual kingdom. You know, in John chapter 4, he's talking to the woman of the well. He said, she's asking her, where do you go worship here or there? He said, pick a place to worship. He said, the time is coming now is, you must worship God, who is God's spirit. You must worship him in spirit and in truth. There's no new kingdom now, and there never will be. The 1,000-year reign, sort of predicted in Daniel. Daniel's the one book of prophecy the Jews chose not to put it. They said, well, he's not really a prophet. He doesn't really speak like a prophet or talk like a prophet. So on the problem of that, Jesus in the book of Matthew refers to Daniel as a prophet. Both in Matthew and in Mark, Jesus speaking, Daniel the prophet said. Also in the book of Ezekiel, they refer to Daniel twice. We've got the Lord inspired language that said Daniel's a valid prophet and should be there. Jesus tells us in Apostle Paul, the kingdom now is inside. It's inside here. Jeremiah, to go a little further on after we talked about divorcing, Jeremiah gets ready to say, the covenant is about to change with the Lord. The Lord has a covenant with the Jewish people. It's changing. Jeremiah verse 31 is rooted in Hebrews 8. That the covenant that existed with them is gone. It's no good, it didn't work, it's gone. Now, my covenant is, they don't have to learn, about me. I'm going to put myself in them. The kingdom is inside here. It's a spiritual kingdom now. That's what the Lord says. I'll take my laws, I'll put them in their hearts and into their minds, and they shall be the near people, and I shall be the God. And the sins and iniquities I will remember no more. And you don't teach another man to know the Lord. I'll do that, I'll put them on myself. We're living under the new covenant. And that's what the new covenant is. The physical covenant with Israel is gone. Christ, the Lord divorced them. And actually said in Jeremiah, I'm issuing a bill of divorce to both Israel and Judah, the entire nation, the kingdom of Israel. issues of biblical divorce, and that's gone. We're now into the spiritual. Now, what I want to get to with all this is that we've got people over there trying to solve the Middle East problem. And I don't know their history. You can't go solve any problem. You can't negotiate any settlement with anybody unless you know what they need and what they want. Well, what Israel wants is they want to restore it because they know the kingdom is coming. What Iraq wants is we want from Persia and we had control of that country. We don't have it anymore. Iran did too. As a person, they had it one time, but they were back. You've got all those things that are going on. People don't understand it or even listen. I don't know if there's ever going to be a solution. So those people probably, I guess, kill themselves. That's what's going on over there is that nobody understands the history. And the purpose of it is, over there, most people think, all of them think they want to restore the kingdom. It's not going to be restored in this kingdom when it was before. The Lord has blessed us with the New Testament. He's blessed us with the knowledge. And, the Lord said, tells us, know the truth, and the truth will make you free. If you understand what's going on there, it's all Israel to see and accept and know. We're in a different kingdom altogether. We're in the kingdom of heaven, and that's what the Lord has brought to us. That kingdom that they have with their Israel is gone. It's gone, and Daniel prophesied it's gone. It's interesting that that's the only book of prophecy that he do not include in their Hebrew Bible. Jesus says it's good prophecy. Ezekiel did, and it also Jesus mentioned in both Matthew and Mark. The prophet Daniel gives credence. So we have a wonderful Lord who has given us the knowledge of the truth. More than anything else, we understand we're not in charge of all the aspects of the truth. We're not in charge of our own salvation. He is. He's taking care of it before the foundation of the world. He chooses, picks the election. He's given us that. He's given us freedom. We don't have to worry about it. We've done enough to him. I heard and accepted and repented and been baptized. And it's ceased with later for the foundation of the world. Your name is in the Lamb's Book of Life. Now, we're living in the kingdom of heaven now. That's what Jesus was talking about. This is the kingdom. It's a spiritual kingdom. It's not physical anymore because man could not follow physical requirements of that kingdom. Now, if you don't understand the basic history of what all's happened over there, you can't fix that. I don't know that it is fixable, but you can't go over there and make the problem worse because people in Iraq and Iran consider the Israel people infidels. And their desire is to kill them. Israel is saying that we never finished the job that God gave us back in the Old Testament, and that to go to the Holy Land, the people don't submit to us, we kill them off. That's why the head of the nation of Israel right now is trying to kill the people in gospel. They want to get back and restore the kingdom of Israel. It'll never be restored. And that's the thing that's important about the prophecy of Daniel. Reminds us for us to read about, know it, and understand it. The people that we have, and I don't want to get into politics, but the people we have been negotiating for years, both parties. How many times have we tried to get a peace deal over there and haven't been able to get it? You need to understand and know your history. That's what it's for. The Lord has given us the truth. Knowledge of it. And you can work if you've got knowledge of what the truth is in the platform. Nobody goes to read your Bible. They're not going to go back and read this, read Daniel, read all the Old Testament history that we know. That'd be the most successful negotiators we could have over there. And I'm not asking for a job. I don't want to go do it. But I mean, it's important to read the history so that we know to repeat it. Be good enough to repeat it. That's what's going on there. Especially when you read the book of Daniel, the kingdom is never coming back. Won't ever be back. They've got a vision over there that's not going to happen. So do the Muslims who've taken over that country after World War II. 1 and 2, they've gone over and taken over a lot of Iraq and Iran and those things. They've got a vision too. They want to come into the Palestine land that they're home to. It's not going to happen either. The Lord has given us the knowledge that we don't have to worry about that physical stuff. Ours is spiritual. You got a kingdom right now. Our kingdom is here, and it's inside you. It's spiritual. You can go to the Lord anytime you want to. You can go to the King without having to ask anybody, without having to treat the King. He's there. He's inside you. You can go to him night, day, whatever your problems are, whatever your burdens are. You've got the most wonderful kingdom in the world. is how he's working. That's the thing we should thank the Lord for, is the knowledge we have of who we are. You are his elect people. He chose you. He chose us. Personally, your name is written in the Lamb's Book of Life. But it's there. I'll never read it again. But our names are there. Won't be taken out. Can't be replaced. That's the kingdom we have. Don't be deceived when you're in this thing. Know what's going on. You know what we're doing politically. Just know what's going on. This is a problem. I hope they can solve it. It's going to have to be solved on a physical basis, a dividing basis. They're working over there still under their mandates of the Old Testament. The Lord divorced himself from the Old Testament. Back in Jeremiah, I'm divorcing myself from those kingdoms. There are those physical kingdoms were gone. Daniel says they're not coming back. You did possess forever. You've never had it. They're not coming back again. And that's what he tells us in the prophets. My prayer today is that you're all in support of we have a song with it. Number 308. We'll sing number 308.